Welcome, humans, and any celestial body else out there listening. This is Curious Minds, Infinite Answers. I'm your host, Courtney Christine Koskin. This podcast, simply put, is a mix of human curiosity and how, with the help of AI technology, curious minds can get the answers we seek. Let's get mind-bending and plunge deep beneath the surface of our everyday thoughts. Let's begin. You ever find yourself in a random argument with a stranger? And afterward, once you've cooled down and are thinking clearly again, you're wondering, why did I even bother? We've all been there. It's almost like an instinct to jump in and set the record straight, to prove our point. But why do we do that? And do we actually gain anything from it? I'm your host, Courtney Koskin, and today I'm going to take a curious dive into this whole phenomenon, not from a place of judgment. Not to say arguing is good or bad, but just to look into more why it's something we do so often. And maybe by the end of this, we'll see our interactions with strangers in a whole new light. Shall we? Let's start with a simple question. When's the last time you got into an argument with a stranger? Likely, it was in the comments section of an online post. Maybe it was a heated debate at your local watering hole. Maybe it was when someone cut you off in traffic. Or when you and someone else both went to push your carts at the same time in the same direction. That then escalated somehow into words. Well, whatever it was, why is it that we have the blood-boiling fight reactions we do? There are a plethora of words used to describe someone like this: argumentative, combative, hostile, antagonist, volatile, pugnacious, ornery, confrontational, quarrelsome, and contentious. Psychologists will say a lot of this human behavior comes down to ego and identity. We like to think our opinions and beliefs are just things we have, but the truth is, they feel deeply personal, like they're part of who we are at our core. So when someone challenges that, it's not just about the topic. It feels like they're challenging us. And it's funny because most of us don't even realize that's what's happening in the moment. Ever found yourself replaying an argument in your head hours later, thinking of all the things you should have said? That's that little voice in your head called ego, still trying to win long after the moment has passed. Moving on from ego, tribalism. One that used to help us survive. Back in the day, being part of a group was the difference between making it in the world and not. And while we're not exactly fighting off wild animals anymore, that instinct is still there, just showing up in different ways. We form ideological tribes. We cling to groups that make us feel safe. And when we encounter someone from a different tribe, we feel this knee-jerk need to defend our side, even if the debate is over something as ridiculous as pineapple on pizza. So we argue, not necessarily to change someone's mind, but to reaffirm our place, to solidify our identity, and to feel right. I think sometimes we overlook the fact that the people we're arguing with, whether it's in the comment section or the coffee shop line, are just people. They have their own experiences, struggles, and perspectives, just like we do. Which brings me to something I recently came across, an article by John Pavlovitz titled, "Everyone Around You is Grieving. Go Easy." He talks about how often we don't realize that the people we encounter daily, whether they're strangers, coworkers, or even friends, are carrying invisible burdens. They could be grieving a loss, dealing with personal struggles, or just barely holding it together mentally. And yet, we engage with them as if their emotional state doesn't exist. I mean, how should we know? Majority of the time, all we see is the self, our self. Often blind or apathetic to looking any deeper than on the surface of what we perceive. Think about how we often snap at someone over something minor. The barista who got our order wrong, the driver who cuts us off, the person in front of us walking too slowly. But what if we stopped for a moment and considered that they might be struggling? What if we assumed just for a second that they weren't intentionally trying to inconvenience us? What if the person driving exactly the speed limit in front of you just braved driving again after an awful car accident they were involved in? What if the person taking forever to pay in the grocery store line is just trying to prioritize what their family really needs and omit what they don't because they're barely making ends meet? What if the person at the sports bar is so incredibly douchey about his team and players being the best and crushing yours? Because the dude just lost their parent and bonding over their team is the only positive memory of love and care they ever felt from them. Point is, on any given day, we don't know exactly where people are coming from. Dare to consider this the next time you find yourself about ready to knee-jerk react into emotional disarray. And if not for our fellow man, maybe keep this in mind for our own sake. Engaging in frequent arguments can elevate stress levels, leading to negative health effects like hypertension, weakened immune system, and increased risk of chronic diseases. Chronic stress is a well-documented factor that can shorten lifespan and diminish quality of life. We already have enough in this world that is trying to kill us. Let's try and control what we actually can. In this case, choosing self-control over strife. Know that every argument costs you energy. In these moments, ask yourself, is this discussion worth my emotional currency? Would this energy be better spent on something that actually improves my life? As seen in blue zones around the world, strong community bonds and reduced stress contribute to a longer life. Less arguing equals less chronic stress, which equals improved heart health, lower blood pressure, and better mental well-being overall. Now let's shift the focus a little bit. Have you ever noticed that the way people interact with strangers can change drastically depending on where you are, like geographically? Think about a city like New York. People walk fast, they don't make eye contact, and it might seem at first glance like they just don't care. But stop and actually ask someone for help. 9 times out of 10, they'll drop everything to help you. Now take a small town like Des Moines, Iowa, or Columbus, Georgia. The vibe is completely different. People might say hi as they pass you, smile more often, and conversations happen naturally at the grocery store, post office, boutiques, and other local spots. The difference? Social accountability. In a small town, you're likely to see the same people over and over. There's a sense of, we're all in this together. Half the time, half the people all grew up there and know each other. Whereas a place like New York City, where the population is enormous and packed into a small area, maybe they're just trying to give one another the little space they can afford to. Not to mention, big cities tend to be quite transient, people coming and going. I suppose it's harder to keep social accountability alive when you're greeted with new faces every day. But here's something that's kind of cool. Humanity really does exist in both places. It's just presented differently. In big cities, the unspoken rule is, I'll give you space, you give me space, but if you need me, I'm here. In small towns, it's, we're already in this shared space, so let's acknowledge each other. Neither approach is wrong. It's just what works for each of those environments. So what does this have to do with arguing with strangers? Well, it's interesting to think about how much of our knee-jerk reactions towards strangers are just assumptions. If someone doesn't smile at us, we assume they're rude. If someone steps into our space, we assume they're being pushy. But really, they're just existing in the social norms of their environment. Or who knows? Maybe they are in their own heads and clueless to their situational awareness, something that is normally only ingrained into law enforcement and military persons. Makes you wonder, how much of our frustration is just a misunderstanding? So, now what? First off, let's ask a few questions for reflection's sake. When was the last time you were in a bad mood and accidentally projected it onto someone else? How do you feel when someone assumes the worst about you? When is a time you helped a stranger and it surprised you? When we actually take the time to think about these things, a lot comes to light. The good, the bad, and the reality of it all. What would happen if, instead of assuming the worst about strangers, we assumed neutrality? Not friendliness, not hostility, just neutrality. If someone bumps into you on the street, instead of assuming rudeness, what if you assumed they were just distracted?
I'm sorry.
If someone responds sharply to you in a conversation, what if you assumed they were just having a tough day? This isn't about toxic positivity or being a pushover by any means. It's just about giving people the same grace we want in return. Then there's awareness. The next time you find yourself in the middle of an argument, pause for a second. Ask yourself, am I actually trying to have a conversation, or am I just trying to win? And if it's the latter, maybe it's worth stepping back, or simply saying, "I can't talk about this right now. I need time to gather my thoughts and cool down." There is literally nothing wrong with that, and if someone gives you grief for asking for that time and space, depending on how quickly the issue truly needs to be resolved, maybe they need to be checking themselves. Look, I get this topic, and what I'm sharing isn't for everyone. Some of us are all for the thrill of escalated heart rates and debates. Well, in that case, I hope you see your doctor often for high blood pressure and hypertension checkups, and maybe look into politics, attorney positions, or joining an MMA gym to really make the way you're wired count. Conflict resolution isn't easy, but hey, if monkeys can do it, so can we. Many social animals have developed strategies to manage and resolve conflicts, ensuring group cohesion and stability. For instance, chimpanzees often engage in reconciliation behaviors after disputes, including grooming and physical closeness to help restore social bonds. These actions help reduce stress and prevent future conflicts within the group. Dolphins have been observed using gentle physical contact and synchronized swimming to alleviate tensions, while elephants display behaviors like trunk intertwining and cooperative interactions to maintain group harmony. Look, I'm not saying to check your adversary's head for ticks or engage in physical contact of any kind. We're not trying to end this with a restraining order. All I'm stating is that animal behaviors highlight the importance of addressing conflicts proactively that help to maintain their social fabric. In human societies, adopting similar approaches like open communication, empathy, and cooperative problem-solving can reduce stress and enhance group cohesion. By fostering more in-sync relationships and effectively managing disagreements, we can create environments that promote well-being and longevity. Doesn't sound too bad to me. Now, if we could just get past hyper-individualism, economic and social inequality, information overload and misinformation, the decline of shared cultural spaces, media sensationalism and outrage culture, the commercialization of identity and beliefs, cultural emphasis on productivity over well-being. Look, any progress is still progress. While we still have a slew of issues to balance, zooming out and realizing that these steps that we can take to better our unity could be the building blocks to all of these greater concerns that need fair resolution. Our default mode is to react, but we can train ourselves to respond instead. Practicing the pause, even a 2-second delay, gives your brain time to choose how to engage instead of just reacting emotionally. How often do we engage with strangers in a positive way? Maybe it's as simple as making eye contact and offering a quick smile. Maybe it's just choosing to let something small go instead of turning it into an argument. There's power in genuine connection. Fun fact, people often unconsciously mimic the body language and mannerisms of those around them. This is due to the presence of mirror neurons in the brain. We've talked about them in previous episodes. These mirror neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else doing it, facilitating that social connection and understanding. So maybe we start being the people that carry higher levels of emotional intelligence, situational awareness, empathy, and centeredness to the best of our ability. Perhaps then those mirror neurons will begin mimicking the good instead of the irritable. If we reflect kindness and patience, others around us are more likely to do the same. Arguing with strangers is rarely about the argument itself. Our environment plays a huge role in how we interact. More often than not, we're all just navigating our own little worlds the best we can. Next time you're in a situation where frustration starts bubbling up, maybe take a second, take a breath. Ask yourself, do I need to engage with this? Or can I just let it be? There's freedom in letting go. Not every battle needs to be fought. Learning to walk away doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're choosing peace over proving a point. How often have you won an argument but felt worse afterwards? Sometimes the greatest power is in restraint. Remember to have perspective. You're not the main character in everyone's story. We assume people's actions are about us, but most of the time, they're not. For example, the cashier who seems rude may have just received bad news, but she can't leave because she needs to pay her bills. The driver who cut you off might be racing to a hospital. Shifting from judgment to curiosity changes everything. Go easy into this world. The days are long, but the years are short. When it's your time to say farewell from this earthly existence, will you be proud of how you treated your fellow man? I'll leave you with this quote I heard once that says, "Strangers are just friends we haven't met yet." Remember what truly matters, and stay humble, my friends. Until we meet again. Thank you for tuning in to Curious Minds, Infinite Answers. I'm Courtney Christine Koskin, and I hope you'll join me for next week's episode as we proceed down the path of curiosity and discovery, uncovering various topics along the way. If you have any comments or want answers to your burning curiosities, drop me a line in the comments below. Until we meet again, find the good in the world, and if you can't find it, be the good.